Well, I don't have much to say here today. It's been a slow day. Other than I think about some of the ramblings that I talk about from time to time. Some of them are pretty far out there, I'd assume. But the one message I was thinking about today was for those who feel lost and, mainly when you're younger, trying to find your identity, I think. Most adults I know now are still trying to find who they are and their identity as well. I mean, when I was younger, it felt like I'd grow up one day and I'd be like adults and I'd know things. Come to find out, there are people who know, very few people who know anything about anything, I guess I would say. So the fear could be of when you're coming up, when you're younger and you're growing up, is that you come to this realization and it makes you feel even more lost. And life's a journey. I think those who question everything too have a real pain inside them. There's the deeper you go down the rabbit holes of what the so-called truth has been portrayed to us, the more you figure out that you've been lied to. And then trust is broken and it's very hard to know what to trust. Then it seems like it's just a never-ending treadmill of untrust. But you forge your own way. Those of us, I think, who've done anything of decency, or anybody who's made it out alive, I guess is my biggest concern, is that we were forged by the fire. We had to get burned. And I don't think it's something that has to happen with everybody. Like, you don't literally have to be torched. Your soul doesn't have to be torched down to the ground. I'd hope not. You can still find meaning and you can still find identity and find things, but I guess it just becomes one big giant curiosity and a giant puzzle. And the thought today was that it's kind of best that way if you really think about it. It's best that it remains unknown and a puzzle, because it always gives you something to look for. I think the point that we mistake as human entities is we want to come to the bottom of things. We want to figure everything out. We do this through science and mathematics. We dissect everything so we can have a clear understanding of what it is, only to find that things change and we find that we can't get a full understanding. Certain things mutate. The theory of chaos. Everything is always evolving and changing. The only certain thing in this life is that nothing is certain. So there's no there to get. Life would be boring if we just got there. As I talk about the last life lived, I think that it could be a section of life where we come to an end. Certain things do have to come to an end, I would think. Again, this is all assumption. I don't know. But maybe it's a change, an end for a new beginning into something entirely and completely different. Maybe we would dissolve into what I can say, for lack of better definition, the everything. Because there's a lot of talk of people saying that, we're all bits and pieces of the same thing. Energy. When you pass away and you die, it's not that you left. You're still here. You're just in a different form or a different dimension. Again, something that we're trying to explain. I don't know if I can articulate this correctly, but I did hear a physicist say, I think it was Machiue Kaku, that you got to imagine that there's the first dimension and then there would be a second dimension. And in physical existence, there's light. That's how we see things, is through light. So you imagine it as two sheets of paper. If you were standing in what is so-called deemed the real world, on the bottom paper, you would be looking up at the top paper where, say, somebody on the second dimension would be living or, residing there. but the reflection of the light would pretty much blind you, where you couldn't see that extra secondary dimension. Whereas if you were on that top dimension looking down, you'd be able to see that bottom sheet of paper and whatever existed on it, if that makes any sense. There's probably more to it. I just can't recollect it at this moment. Sometimes there's cavities in the memory of mind. I believe that in order to live a peaceful existence through all this, if you are an unconventionalist and you're a seeker-seer, everything that you consume, especially nowadays on social media, every bit and piece. I mean, I was doing my taxes and I had to memorize, very briefly, each number that I would put into each category. We're talking about thousands of numbers. And it occurred to me that those numbers, every time you say something, every time you think something, every time you see something, it is recorded. It's just natural, natural occurrence in existence. And I think what could happen, and this is just a hypothesis of mine, is that those cavities get filled with all kinds of unnecessary information, such as numbers, or even worse yet, some of the ass clown shows that we see happening, and these social media is just getting worse with it, with the advent of AI. Just these loud, obscene, complete, obnoxious, almost horrific, I think. Horrific. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, as they say. And this is why I would advise a seeker-seer to stay away as much as possible, away from these things. Choose to seek and see the thoughts that you have in your mind, and to speak with others. Explore yourself, explore the images that you create from the belief systems that you formulate inside your mind's eye, the things that you, for instance, for me, some of the most beautiful things I've noticed is just a flash of a hawk on the side of a cliff, not even moving its wings. I was sitting on a chair at the edge of a cliff, and this hawk just like 5 feet away from me happened to just float effortlessly and very slowly right by me. I could see its eyes and everything. It's just moments like that I cherish inside these cavities of my mind, these caves, if you will. But if we continue on this path, what'll happen is that brain will get gummed up and jammed with insanity, basically. There's not enough hard drive. For those of you who don't know, from my knowledge, the laptop, the computer system, the PCs were designed after the human mind. And there's only so much bandwidth, so much memory that you can have. So especially as we grow older, I think that's what happens when we get dementia, or just we start to get very forgetful. I think that our brains are so full. And the fear I have moving into the future, in the modern day world now, 2026, I think it's February 15th or something like that today, is that it's just getting compounded. A tip I'll leave you guys with too is, I'm not a doctor, but Paul Stamets is probably one of the most interesting, I think, in my mind, one of the most fabulous human beings to walk the planet, with all his work he's done with mushrooms, literally saving the forest and many other things. But he turned me on to lion's mane mushrooms, and it repairs the neurological sheaths to the transmitters that you have in your brain, to help you have better cognitive ability, to help you remember things. And this is especially helpful for people who are elderly, getting a little older, or even if you find yourself forgetfulness even in a younger age. This has helped me out tremendously, and I originally adopted it for my special needs child to help with brain development. So it gives the same thing which magic mushrooms would give you, but without the psychedelic effects. So just a thought. Another thing that I've been practicing that will hopefully help you with your mind to kind of clean it up, but also to bring you some peace, is to, you know how people talk about creating the reality you prefer, manifestations and things of that nature. Well, a good exercise to do is to close your eyes, do whatever kind of meditation that you'd like to do. What I like to do to go on my voyages is to close my eyes, and I do this bodily handling procedure where I just keep discreating my body. Every time I get a sensation, I'm paying attention to my breath, or I get an itch in my toe, something, I feel the weight of my body, the shirt on my chest. I keep discreating. I keep telling myself, this is my creation, allow this creation to discreate. Shut off its creative energy. And I keep going down. This is something that I think if you really went deep, it may behoove you to have some sort of guidance, I think, but I don't think it's totally necessary. But after you get done with the bodily handling procedure, you go to the universal handling procedure, where you discreate the entire universe, every thought that you can. This may take hours, but you'll find yourself, by this time, I don't know how many minutes or hours have passed, but what you'll find yourself is in a rested state. Actually, I don't even know if it's rested. You're just in this space. I guess I would say a comfortable space. And on my way, before I go further, I usually envision my mind, my thoughts, and I open up the cavities, the sections, to receive much more clarity, I would say, to open up all of the mind. It feels sometimes, as they say, I forget what the percentage of our brains we actually use, mathematically, of course, disclosed by science, who has a 1% chance of getting anything right. This is where I open up neurological passageways. I imagine, I visualize that my neurological network is opened to more circuitry, to more movement of information. And like a muscle, if you keep practicing and practicing this and telling your body to do this, then possibly it could happen. Now, there's an interesting fellow by the name of Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. And his whole thing is that how can I explain this? As a helicopter goes over my mind, I'm kind of losing the thought here. We were talking about, speaking about opening, I think I just opened up too much neurological linkage in my mind. But he was saying that the cells, that's where it was, that it's amazing that you have, I think it's like 2.7 trillion cells in your body. And what Lipton found was that when we remove cells from a human body and put them in different environments, they act differently. Some will form into muscles, some will form into fats. So proteins, fats, bones, things like that. Very fascinating. But one of the thoughts or the things he spoke about, what got captivated my attention, was that why is it that all of these cells can function individually, but under your command for your body, right? If for those of you who don't know anatomy, and and I'm not saying I believe in this 100%, but it does make sense that your body's made out of these cells. Everything's a cell. Your bone, your skin, these molecules. But the cells in your body will all stay intact. They won't separate and do different things, or could they? So this is the magic part where science can meet the metaphysical, whatever you want to call it. I just like putting all this stuff together. I mean, there's not really ever time to be bored, I think, in this day and age. But if that is possible, this kind of maps out the scenario, the procedure, if you will, on how these type of things work. So maybe you can open your mind, and maybe you can give love to yourself, to love yourself, love those cells, to command those cells to be happy, to be healthy, to do the things that you want them to do. You're already doing it anyways. But maybe we can perfect this art, this skill that I think a lot of us have lost. This might explain a lot of the experiences and things that we get that science and nobody can explain. I'm going to leave it at that. Guys, I would love to have conversations with you guys. Subscribe. Share this channel if you'd like. All I need to do is get to 50 subscribers so I can go live. That's all I want. But only if you want to. The Unconventionalists.